Thanks, Governor.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, let's get back to our big topic of the day, the affidavit that was just recently unsealed, though heavily redacted. Mike Davis is a former law clerk to Justice Neil Gorsuch, also founder and president of the Article 3 Project. So I don't know, Mike, how much of a chance you've had to go through this. Some of it unredacted, much of it redacted. We know a little bit about the what. We still do not know much about the why in terms of the urgency to conduct an unprecedented raid of a former president's home. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so this affidavit, heavily redacted affidavit, it further evidences that this home raid on President Trump was unprecedented, it was unnecessary, and it was unlawful. And again, what I've been saying since August 8th, the president has the absolute constitutional authority to declassify anything he wants for any reason he wants, and he doesn't have to get permission from any bureaucrat at the National Archives to do that. And that is confirmed by a 1988 Supreme Court case, Department of the Navy versus Egan. So there goes the underlying potential charge for espionage that's in this, that was in this warrant. Second point, the president has the sole statutory authority to make the determination whether a record is a personal record that belongs to him or a presidential record that goes to the bureaucrats at the National Archives and then almost certainly gets sent back to the president to put in his former library, or the former president's library. And that is confirmed by a 2012 decision by an Obama judge related to Judicial Watch and Tom Fenton's lawsuits against President Clinton related to 8 years of audio tapes in his sock drawer. So what is left? They're looking at obstruction. Well, it is legally impossible for a former president to obstruct investigations into non-crimes. The Justice Department did not have the power to even look at these crimes because it doesn't matter what the evidence shows in this affidavit. No matter what that evidence shows, as a matter of law, it is legally impossible for President Trump to have committed espionage or to have violated some Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act actually contemplates that former presidents have classified records. It doesn't differentiate. Congress gives former presidents office space, secure office space. They give the former president's staff security clearances, Secret Service protection to guard these paper records. And there's no allegation that any of these records got into the wrong hands, unlike Hillary Clinton's home server, where she had foreign governments hack the most highly classified secrets in our government, and she didn't get an FBI raid. So what was so urgent that caused the Biden Justice Department to go get these records? And I think it's because President Trump declassified and made personal a copy of his copy of the Crossfire Hurricane records, the Russian collusion records, and the Biden Justice Department never made them public because they're so damning on Obama, Hillary Clinton, the FBI, and the intel community.
Yet we know that this unsealed affidavit did reveal 14 of the 15 boxes retrieved from the former president earlier this year did contain 184 documents with the classified markings. We learned of those documents, 67 were marked confidential, 92 were marked secret, 25 documents were marked top secret. So if the president was being, and if we were able to see a trail of that actually happening, it doesn't appear in this document, or at least it's redacted if it is in that document. If there is a trail of authorities asking on multiple occasions the president to turn over those documents, which they apparently knew were there, isn't that a problem, Mike? If the president had the opportunity to hand these documents over when asked?
The librarians are asking for overdue copies of the overdue books that are not overdue. The president has the legal right to declassify these records and keep a personal copy. The former president had every right to keep these records, and the bureaucrats at the archives did not, as confirmed by the 1988 Supreme Court decision, Department of Navy versus Egan, and the 2012 Judicial Watch case against President Obama with the tapes in his sock drawer. They can demand them all they want. And the question you have to ask is, okay, so they're demanding these records, and Attorney General Merrick Garland leaked that he was deliberating for weeks on whether to order this home raid before he went to a biased judge, Bruce Reinhart, down in Florida, who just recused from President Trump's civil lawsuit versus Hillary Clinton because of his 2017 Facebook post where he bashed President Trump's integrity. So if he had weeks to deliberate, why didn't Attorney General Merrick Garland get an opinion from the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel, or OLC? And the reason he didn't get it, presumably, is because he would not have gotten the answer he wanted. This was a political raid on a former president and someone who is almost certainly going to be
when
a
you
political
say presumably, do you know that to be the case?
of President Biden.
When you say presumably, do you know that to be the case?
Presumably that he's going to run for president?
No, that there was a trail of him not wanting to ask because he wasn't going to get the answer that he wanted.
Well, I mean, why else would, if he had weeks to deliberate on something this unprecedented and consequential, why would he not seek an opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel on this? This is a political raid that was, and then they said that the Attorney General didn't personally authorize this raid. He absolutely did. They also said that the Biden White House was not involved with this raid. They absolutely were, because White House Deputy Counsel to the President, Jonathan Sue, had to relay that President Biden waived President Trump's assertion of executive privilege, which paved the way for this raid. And so President Biden was absolutely involved in this raid, and so were his officials in the Biden White House counsel's office, Jonathan Sue. This is a political hit on a former president.
All right, Mike Davis for